are again, back in the Godly Playroom. It's so good to have this time together. For those of you that may be dropping by for the first time, or for even those of you that have been here for a while and don't always remember from one week to the next, my name is Ruth, and it's my privilege to be in ministry here at First United Church in Wetaskiwin. And this is our Godly Playroom. And we are so excited. We've been able to offer all kinds of training for other folks across Alberta and British Columbia over the past few weeks. They haven't been able to physically be in this room, but they have joined us via Zoom and with pictures and telling their own stories, and we've shared stories on video, and it's been wonderful to see some of those seeds sprout and grow. And I know that there are folks out there who love stories and who love hearing them and telling them. So, I wonder what you need today to be ready for this story, to be ready to just stop whatever's been worrying or going on in your brain and settle into this time and place together. If at any time during this story session you want to pause the video and reconnect with us at another point, you can do that. Some of the questions prompt lots of deeper thinking and wondering. Sometimes they even feel a little uncomfortable, or we might feel sad or angry or upset about something we hear. And I hope you have people there that you can talk with if that happens. And know that you can give me a call here at First United if it helps to talk things through. Today's story is a story that gets us wondering about life and death and people being sick. And we are surrounded with all kinds of news about people being unwell and many people dying. And sometimes we hear so many numbers, we forget that people are involved, and that it's families and friends who are having loved ones die, perhaps from an illness that's related to the public health measures and the pandemic that's happening, but sometimes through natural causes, or perhaps they weren't able to get the care they needed when they needed it. We are reminded that we all need to pitch in to help each other. And so I think we need to light the candle to remind us that we're not alone. And in those times when we feel uncertain, or when we're dealing with someone who is dying or very sad because someone has died, there are people who care about us and who are willing to listen. One of the hard parts about grieving, apart from missing the person and feeling like your life will never be the same, is the emotions get all jumbled up. And so sometimes we really want to be with other people, and sometimes we don't want to have anybody else around, and we'd rather not talk, and we get tired of people keep asking us questions. We can't even make decisions. It feels like we're going crazy. And it's hard sometimes to explain that to others, particularly when those thoughts and emotions can change a little bit like the Sea of Galilee, all in an instant, and become rough and wild, and at other times calm and peaceful. So know that it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to say, this is how I feel right now. This is what I need right now. And that might be quite different in an hour or even 5 minutes. So it takes a lot of patience, both for the people who are trying to help and to care, and for ourselves, to be patient with ourselves as we're sad and work through those sad thoughts and emotions. So let's light a candle. You might want to find one at home and light a candle to remind you of God's presence. Our candle is getting very small. We must be getting close to the season of Lent. Oof, maybe just another week even. And then the candle will get smaller and smaller throughout the season of Lent. And then something amazing happens. The mystery of Easter. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I think that's what you call a spoiler alert. So find your candle. Maybe you have a battery one, because those are really safe, and if you forget to change the light later, it isn't going to cause a problem, except you'll run out of battery. We remember that once there was someone who said such amazing things and did such wonderful things that people began to follow. And the more they followed him, the more they wondered who he was. And one time when they asked him, he said, "I am the light." I think our matches are getting smaller too. Sometimes it can be quite pleasant just to sit and enjoy the light. But I'm going to put it on the shelf so that it won't get in the way as we start telling our story. Although I imagine God might just show up in this story. I wonder. I'll invite you to take a deep breath and to make space in your heart, your shoulders a little bit, and let go of some of that tension that's been rolling around there. Are you ready for a story? Well, this story happens along that Sea of Galilee. We've been telling a lot of stories about that sea. Obviously, it's not the whole Sea of Galilee. That would be a little too much water for in our room. But there are so many important things that happen along its shore and on its waters. And hopefully this will be enough to help us tell our story today. I think we're ready. Are you ready? Once, there was someone who came close to the Sea of Galilee. And whenever he came close to people, lives changed. Peter and James and Andrew had changed. They left their nets and their families to follow this most amazing man. They'd followed him across the Sea of Galilee into unknown waters and unknown places. And now they had come back. There was a little girl who was about 12 years old, and she was very sick. Her mother thought she was dying. She was very worried. And so when they heard that Jesus and some of the others had come back from the other side of the Galilee, Jairus, the little girl's father, went to find him. Jairus was a very important person in the local community and the synagogue. And when he met Jesus, he fell on his knees and he said, "My daughter is dying. Please come and help me. I know if you just touch her, she will be well." And so Jesus went. And the crowds followed, along with Peter and James and Andrew. There was a woman in the crowd that followed. She had been sick. She had been bleeding for 12 long years. And she had tried everything to be well, but none of the doctors had even been able to help her. When she heard about that most amazing man, she knew if she could just reach out and touch his cloak, she would be well. But there were so many people crowding around, and so she crept up and she touched just the hem of his garment. And suddenly the bleeding stopped and she felt well. But that most amazing man knew something had happened, and he asked his friends, "Who touched me?" And they looked around at all the people that were gathered there, and they said, "How can we know? There are so many people." But the woman came, and she spoke with him. And she told him the truth, and how she had been sick for so long, and now she was well. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." And she did. And while they were there, someone came from Jairus' home to say that his daughter had died. And there was no point in bothering the rabbi any further. But Jesus said to Jairus, "Do not be afraid. Only believe." And so they went to Jairus' home. They went into the room where the little girl was lying. And Jesus took her by the hand. And he said, "Little girl, get up." And she did. And she began to walk around, and her parents were overjoyed, and they came to her. And Jesus said to get her something to eat. And then he went on his way. I wonder what happened next. I wonder what Peter and James and Andrew told the others when they saw them next. I wonder what Jairus told the people at the synagogue, or the other people in his household, about what had happened to their daughter. It can be very hard to tell others that someone they love has died, or someone we love has died. I wonder if it was any easier to say that someone who was dead was now somehow alive. I wonder what the woman did after she was well. I wonder if she chose to follow the way of the kingdom. I wonder what faith has to do with whether people live or die. I wonder what you liked best about this story. I wonder what's most important about this story. I always wonder what the storyteller was thinking to put a story inside a story. A story that starts here and has this piece here and then goes back here. And whether the woman and the little girl ever met, and what kind of stories they might tell each other. Or I wonder if the woman's faith was so strong that she helped this most amazing man heal the little girl. Or maybe the well-being of one is connected to the well-being of another. I wonder if there's any part of this story we could leave out and still have all the story that we need. I wonder where you are in this story. Or what part of this story is especially for you today? I wonder if you've ever heard that word miracle. That's how some people describe this story. They say it was a miracle, something unexplained that we can't quite make sense of. We tend to only use that word, though, when it's something good that's happened. We have a whole nother set of words sometimes for those unexplainable, not so good things that happen. One of the hardest parts about miracles is we can't just make them happen. And there have been lots of times when I've hoped or prayed or spoken with other people who have longed and hurt and ached for some kind of miracle that never came. But just like the light, that just because we can't see it anymore doesn't mean it isn't there. Miracles are a bit like that. Just because they don't always come when we want them doesn't mean they don't happen. I wonder if you've ever experienced a miracle. I'm going to put the story away. And you can begin to think about what you might like to do in response to this story. It is such a big and deep story. There's the woman who just knew if she could get close enough to Jesus to touch him, she could be well. And Jairus and his wife and their little girl. And Peter and Andrew. And James. I wonder where John was. But I guess brothers don't always have to hang out together. And that most amazing man who continues to invite people to follow. Whose lives change when they come close to him. Sometimes people can do things they've never done before. Sometimes people can see things they've never seen before. Sometimes people become well. Sometimes in body, sometimes in spirit. And that Sea of Galilee where so many amazing things happened. I'm going to get my response materials ready and bring the camera a little bit closer so we can talk and work together. Well, I found some watercolor crayons, which are a little different than regular watercolor or regular crayons, but I'm hoping that maybe you have some paints at home, even if you don't have the watercolor crayons. I'm going to set my water and my cleanup cloth just here. And you can pick these up at almost any art store. You could find them online probably. This set's seen better days, but it still has lots of different colors for us to work with. And watercolor crayons, or sometimes you can even get pencil crayons. You can either just use them like a regular crayon to color on the paper, or you can dip them in the water and use them on the paper, or you can put the water on the paper and then, or even on a brush. So I'm gonna put some water here on my page. It's called Making a Wash in watercolor language. And the trick is, if you're going to use a wash, you need to have good watercolor paper, good thick paper. Just regular white paper, that'll have some troubles. And then I can color into it. And I can use kind of the point of the crayon, or I could use a flat, and I can spread it with my paintbrush. And I don't know, when I do watercolor, I kind of like for the things to blend. And so sometimes then I'll use the paintbrush on the crayon so that I get color. You can even flick, right? Flicking is kind of fun. You get different spots, and we'll put some waves in here. I think there's a darker blue here I can use as well. Flick some more spots of different color on. You always want to be a little careful when you're putting color on flicking that you don't flick it all over your clothes. Well, that's pretty pale. Probably can't even see any of that color. There's a bit more. Thinking about that Sea of Galilee a little bit. Oh, there's some good flick. And you can even take, if you have a pointy end on your paintbrush, you can kind of make lines. If there's another, oh, there's another blue, I can add in a different blue. I'm getting lots of speckles now. I think it's actually turning into a storm. It's starting to look like a rain cloud. Or maybe it could be like the water's splashing up. That happens. And it sprays. I wonder if the little girl was afraid. She wondered. What comes next? It's a question that so many of us ponder. Nobody really knows the answer. It's always important to rinse your brush off, though. I have sat with many people in that in-between time, between this life and whatever happens next. And sometimes it's a stormy time, especially for families. Sometimes when we're hurting, we get angry and lash out at other people, when really what we want to do is say, I'm scared. I don't know what comes next. There are things I wish I'd done differently. I'm not ready for this person to be out of my life. And sometimes death comes as peacefully as the wind stopping, from one breath to the next. Maybe there's a bit of Sea of Galilee in all of us. I'm going to put my work away, or at least this part of my work, and know that if there are things that have come up because of what I've said or what you've experienced in this story, that it's okay to call or email or just say, I need to talk, and find the people with whom you feel safe. So that you can be well. Let's take some time to pray together. And I will imagine, and perhaps you can imagine too, that I'm holding your hand and God's hand. And we can all pray in one great connected circle. God of life and death, and life after death. There is so much I do not understand, that we do not understand. But what we do know is that we are loved. And life is good. There is beauty and wonder. And we are not alone. Thank you for being with us, for giving us the strength and the courage to face each day, for the many ways that we help ourselves stay well and help others stay well, and for all those people in care homes and hospitals and funeral homes and churches and homes ambulances and places where people sit with others in that in-between space and hold that space so that others can be well. Grant us grace to not be afraid, to only believe. And in those times when we can't, speak peace to our fears. Let us reach out and touch you and know. Amen. You might have chosen to stop the video and do some prayers on your own or with others in your household, and that's wonderful. You know you can do that at any time. You may also want to stop the video now and find something for your feast. My feast this week is very simple. I have a little bit of water and a few of those crackers that just never seem to completely disappear out of the Godly Playroom. But they are very crunchy. I wonder what your favorite food is when you don't feel well. You know, when you're feeling kind of sick and just not feeling your best. Are there some foods that you, oh, I just really, really love to have that. Or it doesn't matter how sick you are, you could still eat those foods. When we were kids, we knew we were really sick if my mom would make us liquid Jell-O, which is you just make Jell-O like you would normally make Jell-O, except you don't let it become Jell-O. You just drink it while it's hot and basically colored sugar. I wasn't that sick very often, but when I was, it was a special treat. And there was this other thing that my grandmother did sometimes when we had sore throats or were kind of not feeling like we would be able to eat stuff and not throw it up. I think she called it pearly tea or something. I don't know. It was basically just a piece of bread with butter on it and hot water and salt. It was just kind of mushy. And sometimes it tasted okay and other times it just looked really gross. I do know drinking water is almost always a good thing though, especially when we're sick. I wonder what helps you feel better. Maybe there are people that are really good at cheering you up when you don't feel well. I like to cuddle with our pets sometimes. The pets don't always agree, but I find it comforting. There are so many different ways of being sick. And so many different ways that we can help each other be well. And so I hope that's something that you work at a bit this coming week as we continue to help each other be well. Because it helps me just knowing that you are out there doing your part. And I'll be here doing mine. And before we know it, our time is up. And we'll change the light. So you might want to get your candle. If it's a battery operated one, it's fairly easy to change that light. Most days. And when I change this light, you know that that light's going to spread out, not just in this place, but wherever you are, it'll find you. And we know we're not alone. God bless. Be well. And look after one another.